Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Żaneta. Another day in Seoul, another more than 10 kilometers of walking. And yes, there were still more places to visit. At this point, my mission to visit every palace in Seoul was still going strong. Today's plan was Cheongdokgung Palace and Cheonggyeongguk Palace, two royal palaces sitting almost side by side in the heart of the city. On the subway, we met a lovely elderly couple from Germany. After chatting for a while, we realized we were all going to exactly the same place. It's funny how you can travel halfway around the world and still end up sharing the same sightseeing plans with complete strangers. If Gyeongbokgung is Seoul's superstar, then Cheongdaegung and Cheonggyeongguk are definitely its quieter siblings. Cheongdaegung was built in 1405 as a secondary palace after Gyeongbokgung. Even though it wasn't supposed to be the main royal residence, many kings actually preferred living here for centuries. One of the things that makes this place so unique is its layout. Instead of forcing everything into perfect straight lines, the buildings were designed to follow the natural hills and landscape. It feels much more organic, almost like the palace grew out of the forest instead of replacing it. That's one of the reasons it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. As we walked through the palace, it didn't feel as grand or overwhelming as Gyeongbokgung. Instead, it felt much calmer and more intimate. There are beautiful wooden halls, peaceful courtyards, and quiet pathways connecting each section of the palace. Every time we passed through another gate, there seemed to be another courtyard waiting on the other side. Behind the palace is its most famous attraction, the Secret Garden, or Huwon. For centuries, it was reserved exclusively for the royal family. We didn't visit the garden. Those tickets sell out quickly and need to be booked in advance. I guess that just gives us a good excuse to come back one day. Right next door is Cheonggyeongguk Palace. Well, right next door is slightly misleading. Even though the palaces sit beside each other, you actually have to leave one, walk around the outside, and enter through a completely different entrance. It really feels like there should be a shortcut. Apparently, the palace architects disagreed. Unlike the other palaces, Cheonggyeongguk was mainly built as a residence for queens and other members of the royal family, rather than as the political center of the kingdom. Because of that, it feels much quieter, with beautiful gardens and lots of open space. Sadly, it also has one of the more difficult histories. During the Japanese colonial period, the palace was turned into a zoo and botanical garden, before eventually being restored to what we can see today. Unlike Gyeongbokgung, where kings held important ceremonies and governed the country, this palace was designed to feel much more like a home. You can actually notice the difference while walking around. There are fewer grand ceremonial spaces and more gardens, courtyards, and quiet corners. The atmosphere feels much calmer and more peaceful. After visiting several palaces over the last few days, I have to admit, they do start blending together a little. One thing that really surprised me during this trip was how international Seoul feels. We heard so many different languages everywhere. And somehow, at almost every historical site, we randomly overheard people speaking Polish. I definitely wasn't expecting that. Traveling with my husband also made me realize something else. There are names in traditional Chinese all over Seoul's historical sites. I don't think I have ever relied on my own personal translator quite as much. After all that walking, it was finally time for food. We headed to Gwangjang Market, one of Seoul's oldest traditional markets. No fancy restaurants, just endless rows of local food, and everything smells amazing. We tried hot dog, the famous sweet pancakes, and samgyetang, Korean ginseng chicken soup. Both were delicious. But after walking more than 10 kilometers, the hot soup was exactly what we needed. Of course, we had to try the claw machines again. Still nothing. At this point, I'm convinced Korean claw machines exist purely for emotional damage. We did at least discover the cutest Ditto Pikachu plushes I had ever seen. Unfortunately, looking at them was free. Winning them definitely wasn't. For dinner, Adrian somehow convinced us to eat Korean fried chicken, again, which is actually quite unusual for him. He almost never asks for the same meal twice, unless sugar is involved. We also went looking for a supermarket. Surprisingly, finding a proper supermarket in central Seoul was much harder than we expected. Most places were just convenience stores, and the biggest supermarket we found was near Seoul Station. By the end of the day, we had walked more than 12 kilometers. More palaces, more amazing food, still no claw machine victories, but somehow another perfect day in Seoul. Tomorrow, the palace adventure continues.